The goal of this recording is really just to show you a couple tips and tricks to help you get started with the exercise. I know it's a lot to ask for the exercise, keeping it really open-ended, and I've kind of seen both sides of this, where there are the exercises and labs that can provide you step-by-steps and just you walk through and do every little step. And I wanted to have it kind of somewhere in the middle, where I'll show you a couple of the steps you need to take, how to find data, how to filter data, how to ask some questions, but then you'll need to go through and kind of pick your data sets, etc. So let's get started. So first off, after you open up ArcMap, you'll have a similar look and feel to this. Should have been similar for the exercise you did in some of the other tutorials after you've opened up the software this week. So the next thing you're going to do, and I'm going to just show a couple of the simple things to be aware of. And so I have a map open here, have the catalog pane open on the right hand side. If you ever want to start with a new map, you can just come here and right click and create a new map. And that will open one up here in the middle. So you can see I have map 2, map 1. So on map 1, you have the ability to use the built-in base maps. So you can use these for any of your projects that you want. Just make sure you pick one that makes the most sense. I really like the light gray, and I also really like this dark gray. They can both be great backdrops for any kind of project you want to do. For example, if I just turned to that dark gray, I turned off the reference data, and now I zoomed into, it's not Nashville, so I zoomed into Nashville, and I've got the streets, I have a general outline of the location, rivers, etc. So this would be a great just canvas to start dropping data onto. And so what is the question that I wanted to ask? And you've got the 3 different ones for yourselves that you'll have to go through. And in this example walkthrough, the question I wanted to ask is, where are there polluted sites in parks, in state and national parks within Arizona? And in terms of polluted sites, the kind of data I wanted to look at are what's called Superfund sites, or sites that have been denoted by the EPA as highly polluted. And so the most important part of this exercise is really just finding data. So within the catalog pane over here, I'm going to go to Portal. And there are a couple options up on the top here. The first one is My Content. So you can see I have a lot of folders and data already built out from the years of creating stuff. There are favorites. There are things that are shared with groups you're a member of, organizations, so this would be other content shared out throughout RIT. Then also these two, which are the ones you're going to be using primarily. There's something called the Living Atlas, and then also ArcGIS Online. The Living Atlas is more authoritative data. So this is data. These are data sets that have been, approved, been vetted. You can think of them as more kind of encyclopedia style resources. The ArcGIS Online links and the data here could really be anything. Anybody has the ability to publish data and then make it available. So you're going to use a balance of both of these to find what you need to do your project. So to start off, I said I'm going to be looking at polluted sites in Arizona related to parks. So first I'm going to start and just search for states. And you can see here I'm going to go across the Living Atlas. So I'm looking for kind of more authoritative data sets. And just by doing that, so here are some of my results, US state boundaries, population. So I didn't really get a good result for what I want. So I'm just going to type in US states. And as I scroll down, I've got something here called US Census States. And it looks like this has been published out by Esri. I can see the owner when it was last updated. And for any of this data, right-click it and then add it to your map, and you can kind of play around with it to see if it gives you exactly what you want. So perfect. This is outlines of every single state in the country. That gives me a great starting place for my map and my project. After I've found some data, so you're going to be searching for data again here through ArcGIS Online or the Living Atlas, You then also need to filter out some of the data that you've selected or added into the map. In this one example, you can see I have all these states, but for my map, all I really want to focus on is Arizona. So I'll show you a quick way to be able to get rid of all these other data sets without even editing anything. So I'm going to go up here and just hit select. So I have the map pane selected. I have this layer selected here because that's the layer I want to interact with. And then over here, I'm going to hit select. And then just by clicking on the map and picking Arizona, I can now come over to that layer and I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to my selection and I'm going to say make a layer from the selected features. And as I click that, you can see this just got a little bit brighter. So all that happened is I took all of those states, my one selection, and now I have a new layer that is just going to let me highlight Arizona. And so you should have already played around with this in the lessons and the exercises earlier, but if I want to change how this looks now, I can then select that color, or I could right click here and go to symbology. There's a few different ways to get to it. I can click on that layer or go here to feature layer and then symbology. And instead of having this solid block, I could click and then change to have an outline or another color for this. So I'm going to click this to do a black outline, properties, and I'm going to make my outline color red to make it stand out. And then you can see I'm making the width of that a bit bigger. And it's still blue. Why is it blue? Because it's still selected. So I'm going to go up to my map here and then clear the selection. So now I have Arizona highlighted in the map, and it's helping focus the reader or helping focus the individual who's going to look at this map on just Arizona. So all we have right now is an outline of Arizona. So let's go and look for some Superfund data, which is the information related to poverty sites, or not poverty, pollution. So I'm searching across the Living Atlas, and you can see actually I got a lot of different results back. And if I want to really dive into and understand what some of these results are, you could mouse over it and you could go to that path. So I'm going to click to go to that actual layer. And I'm going to drag this over so we can all see it. And you can see here I actually get a description of what this layer is and tells me who made this, what this layer is, and what the story of it is. So this is great if you want to interrogate and understand, what the data is and how much you can trust where it's coming from. But that looked like a great data set, so I'm going to add that to my map. And already I've got a little bit of an issue here. So you can see I got my dark base map. I've got these kind of dark icons. I can do a couple different things here. I need to change the contrast because right now those, pollution sites are really blending in. So you have a couple different options. I could come up here and change my base map, and I'm going to change it to the light gray. And already, our focus is now changed from just the very dark to those pollution sites are now getting highlighted a bit more. Or if I wanted to, I could have done the opposite. You could change your symbology for those points. Again, click on that point, and here you can see, I can make them bigger. Or I could come in and change, what that icon looks like and modify it completely. So you could go either way, it's up to you. And also I've got another issue here. So I'm trying to highlight just Arizona pollution, but within my map, it's highlighting these sites across the entire country. So doing almost the same thing we did last time, I can highlight this layer and I can say select by location. So rather than going here and selecting and trying to pick every one of these sites, you can actually use other features or other data to make selections for you. So I'm going to go here and hit select by location. And so what this tool is going to let me do is say, what features do you want to select? What are your input features? And it's already selected that data set I had. The relationship. I want them to be, what do I want to choose? I probably want them to be completely within or within. The difference between these two are, you'll see in our next selection for the parks, which I don't have added in yet. So I'm going to say completely within. I want those points to be within Arizona. And what features do I want to use to select? I want to use this state selection. So that's going to be using Arizona as basically my outline to pick those features. And I'm going to hit OK. So all of those selections are now highlighted in blue. You can see a couple of these on the border that look like they might have been in Arizona were not selected because they're actually not within the borders of the state. So I can now do the same thing I did for that state outline. I'm going to go here and right click, and I'm going to go down to selection and say make a layer from the selected features. And I'm going to go here to clear, and I'm going to turn off this other data set. So now I have just those polluted sites, or those areas within Arizona up on my map. And so this is great, and I could be done if all I was trying to do was tell a story about pollution within Arizona and those areas that are polluted across the state. The last thing I need to add into this data set or into this map is related to parks. So I'm going to just search for parks and see what I get back. Parks, you can see I get USA parks, park boundaries. Let's try to add in the USA parks and see what happens. Oh man, that looks great. So without really doing much in terms of searching for data, you can see there's a lot of great data sets here. So if you add something that doesn't work, or if you add something that makes kind of too much noise in your map, just take it off and try adding something else. For example, here's National Park Service Trails. Let me add that to the map. And you can see that adds a little bit of detail here, letting me see some trails in some of the national parks. But it's really something I don't need for this project. So if I added that and don't like it, I can then come back here, right click, and just hit remove to pull it off. Now it's gone. And so to select the parks, let's go back to our select by location. And for my input features, I have USA Parks. For the relationship, you have a couple different options here, and you can play around with these to see what results you get. And let's try within to see what kind of result we get, within that state. And let's hit apply. And you can see here, we actually have a couple of the parks that are on the borders here that aren't getting selected. And it's probably because their center point doesn't fall within the state outline here, that shape. So let's try something else. Let's try just intersects. So intersect would be, does that one shape touch the other shape? And let's hit apply. And that looks more like what I'd like to have for my map. I want to show all of those areas of those parks that are within Arizona and even kind of bleed outside of Arizona, and the relationship of those parks to polluted areas, so the Superfund sites. So I'll hit OK. And just as we've done with the other selections, I'm going to go here, right click, selection, make a layer from the selected features, and then I'll turn off my other data set. And let me clear the selections, and that looks great. There's a couple things to think about over on the left-hand pane for your drawing order here. You can see I already have the Superfund sites, or those pollution locations, on top of the parks. This could be reversed. You can see here the parks are kind of actually blocking those Superfund sites a little bit. And if I change the transparency of those, it would completely block them. So you can see that layer is starting to block those out a bit. So let me make them a little bit more transparent. And that would be by selecting that layer, and you can adjust the transparency under the settings for the feature layer. And instead of having that over, I want to have the pollution sites on top. So the goal for my map was to highlight pollution and its relationship to parks within Arizona. So I think I've done a pretty good job in the few minutes that we've put this together. I've got data for pollution sites. Those are pretty loud and straightforward on the map. The parks are fairly obvious. most people would think that parks should be represented by green. Again, I could change that color to have the parks be red or purple, but it would kind of confuse the user for what that means. These pollution sites, I could change that icon. These honestly aren't that clear to the user. I could probably change those to make those a little bit more consistent with something that would be pollution or poison. And then I've got my outline for Arizona, which is nice and bold and should make it pretty clear that this is the area we're highlighting. The last step for this is to then go up here to Insert, and you're going to create a new map layout. So I'm going to click New Map Layout. Based on the map, you can pick whatever size you want to. In this case, I'm going to just do a standard 8.5 by 11. I'm going to select that, and then it's going to open in a new tab, and I have a blank map here. So to add the map in that you created, it's as simple as coming up here to this map frame dropdown, and then you can select which map you've created. So here it can see map 1, map 2 correspond with my tabs. And here's my map in map 1. So if I go back to map layout, I'm just going to select that map I've created. Nothing's happened yet. Now I have to just kind of draw a shape into this layout to place it. And now something that's a little odd with the map layouts, it takes a little bit to get used to, is say I want to adjust, how Arizona sits in here. I'd like it to be kind of in the center. And because right now it kind of feels like it's falling off the map to the right hand side a little bit. So if I try to move this up, it's going to move that whole map frame around. And so what we want to do is actually keep clicking to the sides. There we go. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say activate. And activate means it's going to let me interact with the map. And so here I can now adjust the map. I could zoom in, I could zoom out, and it's not going to adjust how it looks in the map layout. And so I'm trying to get this centered pretty nice. If you want to adjust your zoom to be something that's, more subtle than using your mouse wheel, you could come down here at any point and adjust the actual scale of the map to change how much it zooms in. And so I think this is actually pretty good. I've got that centered. It's weighted pretty well up a little bit higher. It's not directly in the middle of the page. And when I think it's good, I come back to my map layout, and I'm going to close the activation. And I've got my map centered there, and it looks pretty great. And then the last thing I'm going to ask you to do for this map layout is just put a title in here for what this map is. And so there's a lot of, even in the readings, I had you skip some of this. Some of the pieces and parts that can be included in a map, which could be a legend. And if I click there and want to bring a legend in, I could do that. Or if I want to bring in a north arrow. Feel free to add in some of these elements if you want to. And I'm just doing these quickly. They kind of look a little bit not very nice. And then the last thing and the most important thing that I'd like you to add in is just a title for your map. So here you can come in and add text up here in this graphic and text while you're under Insert. And there's a drop down here that lets you add in a polygon, or it lets you add in text. So I'm going to click there for text, and then just drag in a shape. Say Arizona Parks and Superfund Sites. And let's double click on that. I can now come in and make that text a little bit bigger or make it bolder. Change that text symbol for it, the size. And let's make the size of that font 20. Hit apply. And good to go. So the one thing that will drive me crazy, and if you add a legend in, make sure you change this, you modify it. You can see here how it says USA Parks _ and selection, etc. If you have these pieces of information in here, make sure you just come over here and then update. So that it updates what it looks like in the legend and doesn't have some of those kind of ugly descriptions. Same thing with the outline for the state. So here I can just type in Arizona, and then over my legend, you can see it just updated to say that outline represents Arizona. And same here. While we're doing this, let's just update with some clear text. So my legend now says exactly what those items are. Looks clear. A user could look down and say, oh, those dots are Superfund sites. Here are parks. And there's an outline for Arizona. And move my title there. And there's obviously a lot more elements you could add in down on the bottom here of the sources of the data, who made the map, and a number of other things. But for this exercise, what I really want you to focus on is just ensuring that your map is visually appealing and that you're following the cartographic principles that we had in some of the readings. So this map is focused on Arizona, highlighting the parks, showing those pollution sites. It's very clearly giving the user the information they want for the story I'm trying to tell. And this could have been a very convoluted map with purple parks and points that are too large, etc. And we could spend a lot more time tweaking this map and fixing it. But for the purposes of this lab, just ensure that you're finding data, exploring, and then playing around with the symbology to present a nice looking map. So I'm really excited to see what everybody pulls together this week in their maps. Good luck. Don't get too frustrated. And if you have any questions at all, just post them up on Slack or send questions to me via email. Again, really excited to see what everyone pulls together and finds. Good luck.